Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today. Quick mic check. Max, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Sweet. Good. Guys, welcome to the second edition of Crisis Response. Max and I are super excited to bring this to you guys, and we're very, very happy to have our guest, Ryan Robinett, with us today. We started Crisis Response when the COVID-19 crisis broke out, and we wanted to provide a resource to business owners, small and large, by interviewing people that had experienced crises in the past and gaining some wisdom and insight from how they handled those things, and to get a better understanding of not just how they handled things well, but also the lessons they learned the hard way, maybe through those times. So I hope that you guys are ready for a great conversation. Thanks, Blake. Maybe later. Guys, I'm going to introduce myself and then let the other guys introduce themselves. I'm Trevor Newberry. I'm the owner and operator at Newberry Consulting Services. We help non-technical software founders build their products. We do a lot of product and project management, early stage rapid prototyping, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to build a software product and you're not a coder, we're the people to talk to. So with that, on to Max.
Hi, everybody. I'm Max Pollock. I'm the founder of Abstract Collective. We specialize in marketing, design, and strategy services and work with brands big and small to help them build their brand and grow. Very excited to be collaborating with Trevor on this and for our speaker today, Ryan Robinett.
Am I up?
Yep, you're up.
All right, perfect. I'm Ryan Robinett. I am with Multiply, and Multiply is a company that I started about a year ago, aimed at either A, helping companies stand up a sales process from scratch, or B, get more out of the one that they've got. And we heavily focus on sort of the human capital management that goes into it. Whereas, yes, the CRM side of it is very important, but we want to back up and make sure that the team is prepared to go out into the market and tell the story appropriately. So we have worked with a number of companies, some of the biggest in Alabama, and some of the smallest. So our offering sort of spans the gambit of large companies and small.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Ryan. We're really excited to get started. We are just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We're going to run through some pre-prepared questions just to get the conversation going. We're also recording this, and this is going to be on the Newberry Consulting YouTube channel. Max will be sending out a follow-up email, so you guys will be able to revisit that. And then I'm also pulling down audio from all of these webinars, and that will be released on the Dispatch podcast feed over the next few weeks. So if you have any questions for Ryan as we're talking, there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, so please feel free to use that. Ask away. We'll get to those right as we get done with the, quote unquote, normal prepared conversation that we have today. So with that, I'm going to kick Max out of here so we can get this started. So
Hey, Max.
Give me 1 second. See you, Max. All right. So Ryan, again, thank you so much for being here. I want to actually, you told us a little bit about Multiply in your introduction, but I was also hoping you could tell us a little bit about your background. Where have you come from and what have you been doing?
Yep. So graduated from Auburn actually got a job during the dot-com boom, was able to hold that job until the dot-com burst 3 months later, and was actually laid off before I got in the front door. And so started my career coming out laid off and eventually landed at Accenture. And while I was at Accenture, I got my MBA at UAB, and there was a professor there that was a part of a IT professional services firm that was it was just a sort of a small company in Birmingham at the time. And so I wound up joining that company, which was called CTS. And I didn't join CTS in startup mode. We were more in chaos mode at the time. We were succeeding because we were good, and we cared a lot, and we worked really hard, but it wasn't a very sustainable model. And but the fun part of CTS was scaling that company. I held a number of positions there, was most prominently over our Birmingham office, which was our headquarters and biggest office, and then took over a startup office in Chattanooga and grew it. And so it was a ton of fun. CTS was later bought by CGI. And so I stayed with CGI for a year and sort of saw the merger through and had a fantastic position. But found out that I, through that process, that I loved the building process. And so that's when I decided to leave and join and form Multiply. And based on a lot of the lessons learned and the tenets that made CTS successful and sort of scaled us into a very repeatable company, process-based company, even though we were building customized solutions.
Very, very cool. So you have seen not one, but at least two of these fun crises that we find ourselves in today.
There's this one. There's 2008, which was it was equally scary. I think it was probably scarier for me at the time because I hadn't seen one before, and it sort of helped develop a lot of the way that I approach not just crises, but the way I approach every single day.
Yeah. So let me, that's a great jumping off point. Let me interrupt you there and just kind of have you set the stage for us. Where were you? What were you doing when 2008 hit? And then, let's talk a little bit about what was the first thing that you did when you found yourself in reaction mode there.
Yeah. So I was trying to think back and I believe in 2008, and when you're in a small company that's growing, the positions, the titles change and that sort of thing. But I actually believe at the time I was the financial services practice lead for CTS. So, responsible for sales and deliveries within banks across our footprint. And so it was basically ground zero for, the calamity that was happening in the market.
Awesome. So what were your first steps when all this happened? Things started to shake out. What were what was going through your head, and then what were your first reaction steps to that?
I mean, so if you think back to 2008, I am a huge consumer of news, and all of the news was just drastically bad. I mean, it was worst case scenario about the entirety of the financial system. It wasn't just about sort of customers and sort of the CTS world that I was living in. It was very much very bleak from a global macro perspective. And so, I got consumed in sort of the big thoughts there, and that I paid a lot of attention to it. I let a lot of fear creep in, and that was not healthy, right? And
Yeah.
so seeing the other side of it, and sort of working through all that, it helped me really develop a lot of sort of the things that I think about, sort of thinking small, not thinking, macro perspective all the time. And so trying to maximize the day, those types of things that sort of helped develop, during that time, which made us successful during that time, which we're also applying here.
Yeah, so it sounds like, as is often the case, crisis sort of forges some of these practices and ideas that we carry forward through us.
That's
I
right.
wanted to ask you, to drill down on that a little bit,
Yeah.
from a financial team and client perspective. As you started to maybe shake the dust off a little bit after, and totally, actually, I want to back up just a second. This
Yeah.
whole situation right now is so full of just really dramatic and frankly sometimes terrifying news cycles
Yeah.
that I think that's it's very applicable to where we find ourselves today. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you said that. I've had to do the same thing where I've had to meter my own news intakes. I'm the same way. But once you were able to sort of shake the dust off of that funk, right, and you started to
Yep.
move inside of CTS from a financial perspective, from a team perspective, and from a customer perspective. Those are the three big buckets that I'm interested in hearing how you guys
Yep.
maneuvered. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing is that given my position and where it was, I mean, like there wasn't some magical pivot that I could make, right? I mean, it was and we were services, so we were lucky. And it's part of what makes services good. It's you sort of have to set the guardrails of what you do, but it gives you multiple angles to be able to provide services to your constituents, to your clients. And so, we started trying to figure out where the problems were, and the huge glaring problem that the banks had at the time was that they had loans that were not producing, that yesterday they thought they were and today they're defaulting. And so there was some real low-hanging fruit that could be capitalized on by putting really good solutions together that helped the banks solve this problem, and they were actually willing to pay for it. And so from a CTS perspective, we actually had some of, if not the largest, I mean, we wound up signing bigger over time, but we had the largest deal at that particular time in our company's history, signed on the very heels of the crisis, because a bank was looking to solve that particular problem. We found a niche that we could play in and sell, and there was a real problem to be that we could capitalize on. It benefited the customer, it benefited our company, and it benefited our employees by giving them avenues. And we stretched people because we were requiring them to add new skill sets and that sort of thing, which created marketability for them. And so, oddly, we wound up growing during that time frame. And there was money to be had, but it was much more scarce, right? So our services wound up being much more focused on the problem set, but we didn't make a pivot that sort of took us out of what we did from our core competencies. And I think that's sort of one of the things that you see more so today is companies trying to find a drastic pivot point. And sometimes it's really necessary to do. But I still think that companies that are successful in the past will continue to be successful. And so, make sure that pivot point is calculated, and it is something that you can come back to your core if you're not building, you're setting out to build a full new core.
Yeah. So that there's a ton in what you just said. First off, the pivot concept. As you said, sometimes it's unavoidable that you have to make some pretty dramatic pivots, but I also think what you said there is pretty insightful in that. And we've tried to do this at my company where we said, okay, things are changing. Capital is available. There's cash moving around, but it's people are a lot more careful about how that's happening, if they're doing it at all. So how can we, quote unquote, pivot to make our services more attractive to people, drill down on the value proposition, and really speak as clearly as we can to how we're going to help them in their companies. So I think that was really insightful. One thing I was interested in is team. How did you guys handle your team during that time? Did you have to lay people off? Did you have, what was that process like?
No, we did not. I mean, there was obviously some scary situations that we were facing because of the uncertainty. But we grew top line revenue. I'm not sure we hit our goals, but we grew year over year. And in the services world, when you're doing that, you've got to have the people to do it. And so we were able to retain our people and that sort of thing. That doesn't mean that we didn't look out and get real fearful about some of the things that could possibly happen. But, it was also very instructive. I mean, one of the things that I developed there was, at some point during that process, I decided that I couldn't control or even influence the macro, conditions around me. But the things that I could do were have a really good day today. And so that was sort of where I started talking to my teammates about is, and it was I have to give credit to a buddy of mine named Philip Miles, who was a CTS cohort of mine, that his, he always wanted to do one good thing a day. And so that could be whether we're connecting with a customer that is a relatively good thing, or a really good thing that we sign a new contract, right? And so being micro focused on the day and then stacking enough good things on top of each other to where, at the end of the year, you're going to have some good things happen to you. And quota and goals and those sorts of things tend to take care of themselves, and you either make them or you miss them or whatever. But if our actions are good on the given day, then that's where we can find, some satisfaction in our day, in a day that, that is often, full of rejection or full of things that are unsettling and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a good friend of mine, his name's Mo Bunnell. I think you and I've talked about him a little bit over in Atlanta. He has a phrase that he uses all the time is think small. Let's see, oh God, now I'm going to screw it up. Think small and scale up, I think, is the phrase that he uses. And I think that's really applicable to what you're saying, is that, we are, and I agree, you're starting with small things, right? You're starting with day to day. You're starting with that, focusing on that next client, on that next deal, what you can do to provide value to that person, and then moving on to the next one. Because if you're thinking about yeah, say what?
Now I was going to say, like, how do I have a really good meeting today? Right.
Exactly.
How do I maximize the encounters that I have today? And, that's basically when I left. That is the process that became sort of how we scaled CTS. And so it's essentially what it boils down to 3 bullet points, which is sort of the mission of Multiply as well, which is put people in a position to be successful, equip them to be successful, and then see them achieve personal results, which create corporate gain. So we were putting people in, our focus every single day was to put people in positions to be successful. And if that meant going out and creating a client opportunity or whatever, we all sort of had that particular mission of doing something good today to position people for success, which allowed us to grow.
Yeah, excellent. That is a great succinct summary of that. I want to get a little bit more tactical here. Let's talk about sales. Making sales right now is obviously there's a ton of scrutiny around how people are spending money, especially in the services sector, but also for any sector, whether it's people buying things on Amazon, right? I mean, people just are watching their money naturally, so a little bit closer when things are a little testy, right? So what sorts of advice can you give people who are looking to continue to sell or engage in business development during a crisis like this?
So here's the thing that is different today than 2008. People are much more accessible today than they were in 2008, right? 2008 was sort of still business as usual, but there was a bit of a bunker mentality and there was fewer dollars to spend. Today, people, the monetary situation is roughly the same. There's less, capital flowing, but people are more accessible. And so, all of a sudden taking a call from a vendor when you're in the house and that sort of thing isn't such a terrible thing to do. And so, so don't be hesitant to keep making your calls and sending your emails. And the thing that I would caution against, though, is making every single interaction that you have some COVID related interaction. I mean, we have plenty of information on COVID. We've got all the the news cycles and things that we sometimes don't need. And so the thing that I would say is that carry on the business conversations as you normally would, because you might find that the people that you're calling on are more receptive to that conversation than they typically are. Now, you've got to strike the right tone, and you've got to know that capital is more scarce today. So there may not be buyers, but or as many buyers. I think there's still some out there, but the other side of it is you can always be positioning conversations for the future, and those conversations are there to be had today, probably more so than what they have been in the past. And it's a little bit easier to get them today because we're home. Everybody's home. So, and there's no travel, there's a lot of different things that usually get in the way that are not in the way right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, a lot of the folks that are on the line today are, they're business owners. They're people that have their own companies that are running their own companies day to day. But let's say I am not a decision maker at my company, right?
Sure.
I'm one of the people a little lower on the totem pole. I have a boss, I have a manager. What
Yep.
can I be doing to add value to the business, to improve business development from when I'm in that position?
Yeah. So there's two things. One is there, if you're in the sales world, there's always business development to be done. I mean, like there, you can keep doing the things that you do, right? But the thing that I would look at is, one of the things that I like to talk to people about is every single day, whether you're in a pandemic or whether you're, exceeding your quota, you always look at your encounters and try to figure out whether, do I have a real buyer that I am going to anticipate some needs and do some things and create an ask and that sort of thing, or do I have somebody that is more of a conversation piece and is not a real buyer? That second one may be a situation where you're always looking at it to determine, is it business development, or can I use some of the portion of this as personal development? And so when you're creating those conversations and you've got somebody that may not be a buyer, but you've got a real business conversation to be had, flip it over to personal development. Maybe there's some part of the story that you're not comfortable with. Maybe there's some sort of topic that you're not always, not as fluid in. Flip over to those and work every day to get better at those with live fire drills, with these conversations that you're capable of having. And so always look at your day as personal development, business development. And so today, if there's not a lot of sales to be had, then make sure you're getting better, and use the people that are out there to be able to facilitate that process for you.
I love that. That's something that, I don't think about oftentimes when I'm having business development meetings, is how am I getting better at what I'm doing during this meeting? It's an almost meta topic, right?
Right.
You're doing active sales and business development, but you're also thinking, what about this am I doing well with? What am I not doing as well with? What can I improve on? It's a lot to hold in your mind at once. I think that's one of the really impressive things about good salespeople and good business development people, is that they're thinking very broad and they're thinking very deep all at the same time. That sort of T model that we talk about.
Well, I have I have a list of people that try to sell to me. And so when I want to test a message or get comfortable with something, I will call them and try to go to lunch with them or whatever. And so, it's an opportunity for them to try to sell something to me. And it's an opportunity I know they're not necessarily a buyer, but I will reciprocate with some sort of message that I'm trying to test, right? To get a live audience feedback, sort of be able to watch it and such that I'm getting conversational with it. And that is not, I don't look at that as business development. I look at that as personal development. And who knows, it could turn into business development, but at the time I know what it is. And so I think being very intentional with your time right now, and trying to find those areas where you can improve, that is beneficial to the company. It's beneficial to your client base, and it's beneficial to you.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. So how are you advising your clients when it comes to organizational alignment right now? The reason that I thought of that question is because I have a very small team, 2 other people, and
Yep.
it's still a struggle when something like this happens, that
Yep.
changes the trajectory so dramatically, to align everybody, when maybe even yourself, you're still thinking, I'm not 100% sure about the trajectory here. How
Yeah.
are you advising your clients right now?
So there's a couple of different things, right? And one of from a multiply perspective, we look at 3 things. It's the organizational alignment, it's the preparedness of the organization, and then it is the sort of the management of the activity. And so from the alignment standpoint, one of the things that we're talking about a lot is, taking people that may not be as utilized now, and then building a new skill set for them such that they're benefiting the customer. Maybe your outbound team is not out on the road doing the things, but they can do a lot of lead gen now. They can build the list, and it may not be the things that they want to do long term, but it's also within the guardrails of what they do. So how do you pivot them to where they're still doing something in their sort of arena without pulling them totally out to where you're sort of disrupting the flow of what they're good at. I mean, one of the things that I am big on strengths and weaknesses, understanding the strengths of your team, understanding the weaknesses of them, and talking about them such that you're not matching people. You're not taking a weakness and trying to build it into a strength. That is a very tough lift. It is understand where your weakness is, and then surround yourself with people that mask or minimize your particular weakness because they have a different strength. And so, that you don't want to take people out of the world that they're good at and put them into something that is a real weakness. And so, but sometimes work is work, right? And we all have to adjust. And so the way I think about this, the prism is, if you think about a triangle, right? You've got the triangle where you've got the customer, you've got your company, and then your career. And so if you ask me, Trevor, to do something new within your company, and you're looking at through the prism of is it going to benefit our clients? Is it going to benefit our corporation? And is it going to benefit my career? Then it's worth me doing, even if I'm not good at it for now, right? Because it's a means to an end, and I can theoretically see some benefit to my career. Where these things break down is when you can't connect those three lines, right? You can't connect the triangle. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to like those things, but over time, if I'm asked to do things that benefit my career, the customer, and the corporation, then I'm getting better, the company's getting better, and we can scale that way. And so, the thing is don't pull people out just to pull them out because things are slow in their area. But if they are non-existent in their area, find a way to adjust, but make sure you're still benefiting their career and the corporation and your customer base.
Love that. Couldn't have put it better myself. That was great. Yeah. A couple of questions before we jump into Q&A.
Sure.
Okay, we're about 11:32 right now. So I want to leave about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A. By the way, folks on this webinar, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom, or you can raise your hand if you feel like talking directly. I'm watching that as well. So anyway, these last two questions here, in the last webinar with Greg, we talked a lot about how sales really needed to transition in some ways from selling and into service. And I think maybe that was indicating that pre-COVID-19, we were things were going gangbusters, right? I mean, we had just record highs on the stock market. People were buying and people were selling, and maybe we lost a little bit of our focus on how are we serving that client, that customer. I'm interested in your thoughts on that same subject.
Yeah. So here's my approach. This is my approach yesterday. It'll be my approach tomorrow. Like, I'm an operations guy. I'm a problem solver, and I happen to be plugging into the sales world. And so when I am talking to either my team at CTS or I'm talking to a customer from a multiply perspective, I view sales as problem solving. I don't think any of that has ever changed, right? If you are selling something, you are talking about how your solution fits into a problem set with a customer, and then you are going to solve a problem which benefits them. It reduces their stress, it reduces their workload. You are solving problems for customers. And the goal of a salesperson is to find problems and solve them. It is, I'm not big on we just sell it and forget it, right? And that could be, there's various levels of interaction that we have in the services world. It's that makes a lot of sense because there's sort of a stickiness that goes on with the relationship, post the sell. But even in sort of the online or the SaaS world, you're still looking for those problems that clients have, and you are solving the problem, because that's what creates the longevity, the continued transaction, is your product, your service solving the problem. And so I don't think that's changed in my world and sort of my view of it.
I am so glad to hear you say that. I agree entirely on that. That's one of the my business development training has been rooted in that concept of, if you aren't solving a problem, if you aren't serving your clients, then you're probably selling the wrong thing. So,
And
yeah.
I sort of, I subscribe to the thought that sales is a skill set. It's not a personality.
Yep.
And so really good introverted problem solvers can make really good salespeople
Yep.
because they say what needs to be said. They're not overly ambitious about it. They articulate the problem in as few words as or the solution to the problem in as few words as necessary. They transact and then they move on, right? And there's not this quote sales process that goes along, or this salesmanship that goes along with it. It is, and so that skill set can be taught, and it is very effectively taught to problem solvers.
Yeah. Excellent. Parting words here today. Just the last thing that I've got on my list to ask you about is, we've got some folks on this webinar that are probably, to varying degrees, a little freaked out about the
Sure.
state of things. Right? It's scary. I mean, I was terrified the first couple of weeks that all this went down. I thought, oh my God, that's it.
Right.
That's pretty much it for my business. And
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that wasn't the case, but,
Right.
there's still a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. So I'm interested in some parting words from you on how to stay forward focused and optimistic in the middle of a crisis.
All right. So here's Ryan's perspective, right? And I have had the ups and
That's why
downs.
you're here.
Yeah, I've had the ups and downs just like everybody else, and I've had, some good ups in this that were surprising. But the thing that I do is I don't look further than 2 weeks out, right? Like it is, my perspective is I'm going to operate in this environment for 2 weeks, and I'm looking out 2 weeks from now. And then if we're back and we're sort of out of quarantine or whatever, then that's good. If not, I'll reevaluate in 2 weeks. And so I'm not looking at this like it's an 18-month or 2-year or whatever, and I don't look long-term because I can't control long-term, right? It is, I look 2 weeks out and then focus on the day.
Yep. That's perfect. I love that. Anything else to add to that?
I think that's it.
Cool. Man, this has been fantastic. I'm going to bring, let's see, I'm going to bring Max back in here. Give me just a second.
Sure.
Here he comes. There he is. So I think Max, there you are. Max has a few questions that have been sourced from the audience ahead of time. But again, guys, if you have any questions, any comments, please jump in that Q&A section or raise your hand. I'll be watching for that. Max, I will let you take over on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trevor. And Ryan, thank you so much for offering some feedback. I want to echo what Trevor said. If you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function. But to get us kicked off, Ryan, what would be some specific advice you would give to somebody trying to adjust their tone during this time, whether they're reaching out for a meeting, for a call, trying to close a sale? What kind of advice would you give to people during this time?
So there's two things. One is your style is your style, right? And so we are not as good when we try to bring in some other style that is not authentic to us. And so understand what your style is, and for better or worse, my style is a little bit subtle as a chainsaw, right? I don't mind just getting to the point. And so, if I try to sort of soften things and sort of, that's where it gets tricky for me. And so understand your style, but understand the problems that the business is facing that you're calling on. And then that's what you adjust your message. So it's not necessarily adjusting your style. You may adjust your tone, you may adjust your messaging, but it's trying to anticipate the problems and understand the concerns and problems that the customer or the prospect has. And so, don't change your style, but I'm a big believer in let's have business conversations, and when you call, make it meaningful, like make it, to the three constituents that you're serving, make it meaningful. And that always isn't the COVID conversation. I think that's the biggest thing is have a business conversation.
Gotcha. That's really good advice. Another question that we have is specific to training. So what are some of the hardest qualities to hire and train for a growing team specific to sales, business development, or anything that's customer facing?
So, so the biggest problem that I see is that, that sales, like we to solve our sales problem, HR is going to go out and hire the best salesperson. And so, the best salesperson right now has a job. Or in normal scenarios, they have a job, they're highly paid, and they're very coveted by their organization. And so, if you dislodge that person, it's generally very expensive, assuming you can make the financials work. So and then there's still no guarantee that that person comes in and knows how to sell your particular business. And so, generally that process happens at varying degrees, and very quickly there's a week, there's an hour, there's a month, there's some sort of onboarding process or period of time. And very quickly you transition to how many calls did you make? How many prospects do you have? How many meetings do you have? How big is your pipeline? Did you make quota? Did you not make quota? And the massive assumption in there is that the company knows why somebody buys something from them, that this person knows how to handle the new contacts that they got. They know how to close a deal and all this kind of stuff. And so sort of the HR piece of it, of preparing that person, is skipped over because we've, quote, hired a good person. And, there are great salespeople that are out there to be hired, but it's still the burden of the company to position that person to be successful, because it doesn't just happen. And that's why you see sort of this 80-20 rule in sales, where sort of the unicorns figure it out and become the 20% that drive 80% of the revenue. And I just think that there's a better process for positioning people, that when you bring them in, that you want them to carry the message for your company, that companies can do a better job of positioning them. And that is the foundation for how we grew CTS. It's the foundation for Multiply. Sales isn't a personality that often gets hired for.
Gotcha. That's very helpful. Another question that we had was thinking about potential clients or even leads during this time. Are there specific problems that you foresee them running into more often, or specific traits that they might be looking for more so now in a service provider?
So it's a good question. And service provider is such a broad term, right? But the value that a service provider can bring right now is sort of, maybe mentorship is the wrong word, but advice, right? Because companies are curious about how other companies are operating. And so service providers that see the insides of other companies, and you don't want to, you're not talking about trade secrets and that sort of thing, of course, but you do possess some knowledge of what's happening in the market that generally that your client companies would not have. And that is a valuable thing to offer and talk about, when you're approaching companies. And it creates a different conversation than just, here's the service. You can, that's how you become a true partner.
Gotcha.
And it's really not, of course, you're not, divulging secrets and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. That's really solid advice. And I have one more question left.
Okay.
Again, for the audience, if you use the Q&A question, we can also have your question asked to Ryan as well. But looking towards kind of what you said about focusing on the micro and acting small, you use the phrase of take it a day at a time, or how can you do one small thing each day? Is there any kind of other more like mindset driven advice that you would give to people in sales or business development roles during this time that maybe you weren't able to cover earlier?
So, the psychology of sales is that it is a rejection business. right? I mean, you have far more rejections, and this is, you know, I would say this is career. I used to talk about it a lot, you know, with a big team under me, not just sales teams, but you've got to find your peaks and valleys, right? So, you know, there are things that you really enjoy about your job, and then there are things that are monotonous and boring, and you don't like to do them. And so, you've got to look at you've got to look forward to your peaks and understand what your valleys are, so that and then when you find a peak and you find yourself on one, you truly enjoy it, right? Because the valley's coming. Like all this stuff that you had to do to get to your peak is a necessary part of the business and in your job and that sort of thing. So truly enjoy the things that you enjoy, right? Recognize them. Um, you know, I like, you know, making sure that the team understands what our peaks and valleys are, so that you can have others that share in sort of the joy that you're there. I mean, for me, like I write a lot of documents. I hate writing documents, but it is a necessary evil. And so, but I love beginning things and I love ending things. And so sort of the middle part is boring to me. And so, but I have to truly enjoy the beginnings and the ends, and seeing sort of value added, because the middle part of building the value is sort of boring to me. And so, that's what I'd say. Understand where your peaks are, understand where your valleys are, and truly enjoy your peaks, because the valleys, you know, it's coming, and but it's also a necessary part of what it is that you do.
That's great. So I think we're going to just move into just a couple of final thoughts, parting words
Sure.
here. Guys, thank you so much to everybody, Ryan, yourself included, Max, and all the attendees for showing up for this. We have really enjoyed doing this. We're looking forward to several more. I'm going to let Max sort of preview what's coming in the crisis response pipeline. What do we got up next, Max?
Definitely. So this is our second one that we've had so far. Our third one will be June 2nd, same time, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern, and it will be with Alana Diamond and Afshan Khan of Innovation Works and Alpha Lab Gear, respectively, in Pittsburgh. So both of them have just a ton of information and a ton of wisdom around how to best start, grow, and scale a product or a hardware business. So if you sell a physical product, or if you're in the hardware space, this will be something that you don't want to miss. We'll have the full details of that shared in the follow-up email that you'll be getting later today or tomorrow, along with the recording of this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful. Lots and lots of good thoughts, good advice, and wisdom from your experience. So tell everybody, you know, is there a place where people can find you? Are you guys running any sort of promotional offer right now? Please just go ahead and lay it on us.
Yeah, no, you know, we're a custom services shop, so there's always the promotion going on. And but it's you can find me at www.askmultiply.com, Ryan at askmultiply, so askmultiply.com. And you know, we are literally servicing the largest companies in Alabama and some of the smallest. And so we've got, you know, engagement models that'll work for all. And then we've got a technology platform that is on the horizon that we will be rolling out that will allow companies to subscribe to the things that we believe are important, which is sort of taking the activity based management and sort of adding another layer to it, which is making sure that your people are positioned and they're equipped and they're achieving personal success, which creates corporate gain. So we've got a fun year ahead of us. It's been a fun, you know, startup mode, but we're still, you know, thrashing and having a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. Max, how about you?
Awesome. So we have a exclusive offer for the people in the webinar. We are giving away to up to 3 businesses 30 days of weekly business strategy coaching. So this is for 4 sessions. And this is really good for an entrepreneur who stresses about what they don't know and wants some help with unlocking their blind spots and also wants to focus on execution, moving their business forward with an entrepreneur right beside them. And that will be directly with me. And I've had experience working, consulting, and coaching over 100 startups. So if that's something that might interest you, if you're a small business owner or a startup entrepreneur, there'll be details in the follow-up email about how to claim that free service.
Awesome. And then finally, Newberry Consulting's, we are actually offering a story mapping deliverable. And we are going to select a couple of people, 2 people that attend these webinars to do that for free with. So story mapping, a little bit about that. When you're building a complex product, a lot of times it helps to put yourself in the shoes of your target customer and tell yourself a story. We break that into large stories and smaller stories and help you organize those into orders of priority, sort of a release cycle, if you will. It's a really, really valuable practice. We found that it has saved a lot of time and money for our clients doing this. So normally we charge around $600 for this, but we're going to do this for free for a couple of people that attend the webinars. So if you want to send me an email directly, it's really easy, trevor@newberryconsulting.com. And you can just say story mapping interested if you want to in the body of the email. But I am looking forward to doing that with a couple of people. And with that, I think that is the end of this this part of the crisis response series. Ryan, again, thank you so very much. Your time has been incredibly valuable to all of us. Max, thanks for teaming up with me on this. This has been a lot of fun. And guys, look out for a follow-up email that will have a link to the YouTube recording of this, some recap from this session, and then information about the next crisis response. So unless Max, Ryan, anything else?
I'm good. I appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody stays safe, stays healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on June 2nd. Thanks so much.
See you guys.